I got a call the other day from my old friend Bubba back home. He was really wound up and excited, and he talked about 20 minutes before I could get a word in edgewise. To summarize that 20 minutes, let me say that he had come into an inheritance a number of years ago. His old Uncle Vincel had passed away at the ripe old age of 93 and left him a few acres as an inheritance. For those of you who know the area, it's just the other side of Wapanucka. If you don't know the area, it's still there, but my description didn't help you any. Anyway, he'd always liked Uncle Vincel and hated to see him go, but by and by he came to terms with his loss and went over to inspect the property. It turns out that Uncle Vincel hadn't been able to keep up the place for quite a while and had let it grow up. It is covered with cedar, scrub elm, and bodark. Bubba went in with a bulldozer and started dozing out the big stuff, and then he took in a brush hog and got the smaller stuff. In the course of doing all of this, he found 12 rusted old cars. "A dozen cars?" I stopped him to ask. Didn't he believe in trading them in? Uncle Vincel was real sentimental, he said. Besides, they were Fords. Why make someone else suffer? Continuing with his story, he said that the tires had been taken off the cars and the cars left up on blocks. In the process of cleaning up the property, he'd come upon a bunch of them stacked up in his uncle's barn. I did some arithmetic. "Including the spares, that would be 60 tires, I said. "That's a whole lot of rubber." "Well," he said, "some of them were gone missing. I could tell because he had them stacked in piles of 5, but there was one pile that only had 2 in it. I don't know how many there are. That's the reason I called you. But you got to let me finish." He took a deep breath and went on. "I wanted to clear out the barn so I could put some stuff in it besides tires, so I brought Billy Bob and Chester over to help." Billy Bob and Chester are some folks he knows. They've been in the pen, and he doesn't really trust them very much. I made sure we all stayed together, and each of us took one tire at a time from the barn to the flatbed truck I'd borrowed. I don't know how many trips we made, but on the next to last trip we had gotten all but one, so I went back alone and got it so I could lock the barn. I'd seen Chester looking around at some of the stuff I'd put in there already, and I decided not to make it any too easy for him to get back in. When I got back to the truck, I found that Billy Bob had stacked all of the tires into piles 4 high, and it had all come out even. Then I put the one I had on, and it sort of messed up the pattern. He got kind of mad at me. Billy Bob has really got some issues. He paused, and I heard the news in the background and his police scanner clicking on. "Well," I said, "that's all very interesting, but why call me?" "Didn't I tell you?" he asked. "No." "Well, it's because I need to know how many tires there were." "Here's a clue," I said. "Go out and count them." "I can't," he said. "Somebody burned them. I think it was Billy Bob. He really is upset that I messed up his pattern. Or it could have been Chester. Chester came by the next day and told me it hurt his feelings that I'd locked my barn like that. I'd asked him how he knew I'd locked it because he couldn't have seen it from the truck, but he said that didn't matter. It was still an insult. Anyhow, I need to know for the insurance. Somehow my insurance company got the idea they were new Michelins, but they want to know how many I had. If I just make up a number, they might sift through the ash and find out it is different. I'd hate for them to think that I was dishonest." I didn't think about the ramifications of what he had said because I was still trying to come up with a solution. "Count the rims, then," I said. "Metal doesn't burn." "Uncle Vincel had taken them off the rims," he said. "I think he had sold them to bury Aunt Petunia." I was frustrated. "You haven't told me enough. Do you think I'm a mind reader?" "Well," he said, "I figured you might know because of your being a college math teacher and all, but I guess that college stuff ain't worth all that much if you can't even tell me how many tires I had." With that, he hung up the phone. About 2 the next morning, I figured out how to do it. When I called Bubba the next day, his circumstances had changed. The insurance company looked over the ash and said they couldn't possibly be new Michelins like I said. They told me they didn't much cotton to insurance fraud. Can you believe that? "The nerve of some people," I replied. How many tires were there?